Welcome everyone to another edition of Trades Talk Tuesday. I am your host, Pop Culture Mechanic. You can just call me Pop for short. So, as I do in this stream, this will be all about skilled trades and related things to it. As I'm going to start off by reading a little bit of maintenance news. So with that, we will look at MRO Magazine and some of the top stories they have going on right now. Metallurgical Sensors appoints COO. Okay, never heard of Metallurgical Sensors. Sandvik Coromant appoints marketing manager. If you've been in the trade, you've seen Sandvik tools out there, usually machine tools. Germany, Poland take over natural gas firms tied to Russia. Well, this ought to be interesting. Let's see what they have to say about that. You'll have to excuse me. I'm still a little under the weather. I'm on the back end of this little bit of a stuffed up nose and a little bit of a sore throat. So I'm not going to sound exactly how I usually do, but we'll power through it. It says here, Germany and Poland announced separate takeovers of natural gas companies linked to Russian energy giant Gazprom on Monday, saying the moves were aimed at securing supply as Europe struggles with an energy crisis tied to the war in Ukraine. Germany said it is nationalizing the former German subsidiary of Gazprom months after it was put under the control of a government agency, its latest nationalization in the energy industry since Russia's invasion. The government cited the debt load of the company, which has been renamed Securing Energy for Europe, and said it was making the move to head off the danger of bankruptcy, ensuring that it keeps running. The economy ministry said that SEFE, which is involved in the trade, transport, and storage of natural gas in Germany and neighboring countries, is a key company for Germany's energy supply. Poland's government, meanwhile, said it has taken temporary compulsory management of Gazprom's share in the Yamal gas pipeline system in Polish territory. It said the takeover was needed for the country's energy security and to ensure smooth decision-making in a company vital for gas flows. As European countries supported Ukraine, Russia slashed supplies of natural gas used to heat homes, generate electricity, and power industry, creating an energy crisis that is fueling inflation and forcing some factories to shut down as prices have risen. Germany is a major importer of Russian gas. Before the war, hasn't received any gas from Russia since the end of August, while Poland was cut off in April. Polish Minister for Development Technology, Waldemar Buda, said the management takeover was necessary to ensure the proper functioning of Europol Gas Pipeline Company, owned by PAO Gazprom and Poland's energy giant Polskie Orlen. After Poland sanctioned PAO Gazprom over the war in Ukraine, Buda said there was a decision stalemate at Europol Gaz, with the Polish operator having no partner to decide on the necessary maintenance work with. We are doing everything possible to eliminate the effects of Russia's aggression and to eliminate Russian capital and Russian influence, Buda said. In Germany, confusion over ownership and sanctions also played into the decision to nationalize a former Gazprom subsidiary. In early April, the German government put its network regulator in charge of what was then Gazprom Germania after an opaque move by the former parent company to cut ties with the unit. The regulator was appointed as the company's trustee, with the right to dismiss and appoint managers. The company was subsequently hit with sanctions by Russia in a tit-for-tat move for Western sanctions over Ukraine. Germany's economy ministry said Russian sanctions put the company in a difficult financial situation, and that business partners and banks have either ended ties with it or declined to build new ones as a result of the unclear ownership situation. SEFE already has received 11.8 billion euros in government loans to stabilize the company. That is now being increased to 13.8 billion euros. The government is taking over SEFE via a capital cut that removes previous stockholders, along with an injection of some 225 million euros a new capital under the umbrella of a government-held holding company. It's the latest energy sector nationalization by Germany. In September, the government said German authorities were taking control of 3 Russian-owned oil refineries to ensure energy security. The 2 subsidiaries of Russian oil giant Rosneft were put under the administration of the national network regulator. Shortly afterward, the government announced the nationalization of the country's biggest natural gas importer, Uniper. The company's losses had mounted as Russia reduced gas supplies. Okay, so Poland and Germany having to take over some gas firms that were tied to Russia. What else we got here? Environment Minister says emissions cap on oil and gas expected by end of 2023. Okay. TK Elevator appoints CEO in the Americas. Government of Alberta invests to help the province's industrial sector reduce emissions. Government of Canada finances a certification program for small food enterprises. Collective mining receives formal recognition from the municipality of Marmato. I don't know where that is. Oh, here we go. This one. First Canadian rover to land on the moon. This is the first I've heard of this. Let's see here. A contract of $43 million to Canadensist Aerospace Corporation from Bolton, Ontario, and its industrial and academic partners has been made to build the first Canadian lunar rover. The Canadian lunar rover will fly as part of NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services initiative and would land in the south polar region of the moon as early as 2026. For the first time in history, a Canadian rover will be sent to the moon and will help in the international search for water, ice in the lunar soil. This rover is the outcome of decades of building and refining Canadian rover technology. The rover will carry 6 scientific payloads, 5 Canadian and 1 American. With this contract, Canadian Systems will continue to innovate in the areas of technological strengths for Canada, like robotics, advanced vision systems, and science instruments. Oh, hello, Godzillionaire. Like NASA has any shuttles to get to the moon? Well, I guess that's what has to happen is other people will step in. It goes on, designing a rover that can withstand the harsh lunar environment is extremely complex, but today is proof that Canada's space industry thrives on challenges and is ready to exceed expectations, said the Honorable François-Philippe Champagne, Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry. This would not have been possible without Canadian ambition, skills, and our talented workers. With this exciting mission ahead, Canadensys and its partners are strengthening Canada's reputation as a world leader in the space industry. Well, good for that. Good for us. Leadvance to open distribution center in Pennsylvania. Let's see what this is all about. Leadvance is opening an eastern distribution center in Easton, Pennsylvania to service the eastern U.S. region. The EDC will start supporting pilot customers in December with full rollout in early 2023. This will enable quicker delivery times into the region, having stock available for local and New York City pickups, and better control of inbound container processes from the port. We recognize many factors contributed to challenges around having 2 distribution centers in the United States. The industry and the world have changed, and this move will allow us to service our customers more efficiently, effectively, and reliably, along with local will-call services, said Jonathan Lubeck, U.S. CEO, Leadvance. Our company's roots are in Pennsylvania, and our trusted Sylvania brand is literally part of the state's name. We always have our customer top of mind, and we are proud to be returning to Pennsylvania to be the bright choice for them. Okay. I for one am I'm a big proponent for having more centers around that people can get their stuff from, rather than just waiting for it to come over on a ship from China. I think they should have more local warehouses, more local manufacturers of things, so we're not relying on relying on that source. But yeah, that's pretty much it for any of the news that struck me. Nothing really too crazy. But today, I was going to get into fasteners. Of course, when everybody ever thinks fasteners, the first thing they think of is either, nuts and bolts or nails. Those are the most common ones anybody has ever used. I mean, when you're little, you've picked up a hammer and a nail and you can hammer it into a board and you're proud of yourself. So, as it goes, there is a lot more to it than just those. Even with these here, I'm sure there's way more than this list has anyway, but this is what I could find. This basic screw, and that could be a machine screw, which will have finer threads to be put into a threaded hole. The washers that go with it, and there's whole different kinds of washers you can get. You can get the shake-proof ones, you can get the lock washers, flat ones, fender washers. Squirrels love acorn nuts. They sure do. Rivets. Sometimes it's still the good old-fashioned drill a hole and put a rivet in and use a rivet gun. That's still in use. You can get aluminum rivets or steel ones, and they still have pretty good holding power. They will eventually come loose if there's a lot of movement. Carriage bolts. These are good. These are good because they have the rounded head, so things will slide over them and won't get caught on them. And then they have the square underneath them that sits in the square hole to hold it from spinning. Yeah, and as I said before, nails. There's all kinds of nails. Finishing nails, starting nails. There's like big giant spikes you can get. And then you can get really tiny ones just for like little finishing nails. Yeah, sheet metal screws. Those are really sharp. And they just used to hold pieces of sheet metal together, which are very thin. Nuts. All kinds of nuts. There's, there's hex. There's square. There's different grades. You can get pretty much any kind of nut you need, really. Bolts, again, as well with nuts, different grades, different material, different lengths. Really, material is very important when you're choosing it for your job. Whatever you're going to do, are you going to be in a harsh environment? Do you need to go stainless instead of carbon steel? That's the choice you got to make when you're out there. Over here, eye bolts. Eye bolts, yeah, used for lifting. Most of the time, you'll see these on the larger motors. They'll have their own eye bolt. You make sure it's secured tightly and it's only made to lift up the weight of that motor. Don't try to lift it up with a gearbox on it or anything like that. It'll put too much strain on it. And you could have it pull out of there. Yeah, and like I said, eye bolts you can use for lifting things with the crane or whatever, an overhead implement that'll lift things off the ground, whether it's chain fall, come along, whatever like that. U-bolt, good for holding things together around radiuses. So if you have like some, what do you call it, hand railing, and you got to secure something to it, you can use the U-bolt. Clamp it down, good for clamping down pipes so they don't move. Threaded rod, very handy. You can make a fastener at any length. You just buy your length of threaded rod, cut it to whatever you need, and there you go, you have it. One downside is if you're got a nut and you got to make it from, say you got a 3-foot long piece, you have to run it down, 18 inches. You'll be there a while. Acorn nut, I think that's more of a finishing nut. You put it on afterwards, makes things look pretty, keeps it all so that you don't get cut on the threads of the bolt that it's going on. Castellated nut, you'll see this where you have to set things to a certain depth, or you don't want that backing off at all, so it'll screw down onto the thread, but there'll be a hole drilled through, and what you usually do is stick a cotter pin through the castellations of the nut and the hole and bend it around, and that should hold it from spinning. The set screw. Okay, yeah, used to secure things to shafts, whether it be some shivs or taper lock or whatever it is like that. And you got to be, when you're looking at these, it's you got to make sure you get the right size, whether it's imperial or metric. You got to double check that, because it's easy to round them off and then you're at a loss for trying to get it out of there. And different lengths too. Don't just go for the shortest one you can get. Sometimes you need a longer one, because then the wrench you use, your hex key wrench, won't reach. So always try to get the right length. Yes, Godzillionaire, the right tips on the set screws too. Some of them will be knurled, and that'll really cause a lot of marring of the shaft. And you can get ones that are made to sit in an indent, so you can have like a little bit of a drill and make a little bit of a resting point for it, and then they'll have a little, the set screw will have a point on it, and it'll get right into there and help with not letting it spin on the shaft. So, good point. What else we got? Well, that says pins, but that looks like a safety pin. I don't know about that. Yeah, it's a fastener, but not much. I don't think I've ever had to use a safety pin out in the field. Lock nut, nylon lock nuts. I mean, those are good for holding stuff in place so they don't back off. Once you take them off, you should replace them with a fresh one, because they won't have the same holding force as it first did. Square nut, I think that's a little bit of an older kind of nut. You rarely see those out there. At least I have. It's when you do, it's pretty rare. It's probably on an older piece of machinery, and you probably need to you can't use a box end wrench on it. You have to use an open end wrench. What else? Coupling nut. Okay, yeah, this is good for securing like threaded rod together and such like that. Gives you a chance to put these two pieces together with something substantial. They're usually pretty long. Wood screw. Yeah, different materials, different sizes. Different different driver sizes or types. Like you can get a Phillips head or a Robertson. Yeah, I think Robertson's more popular up here in Canada than it is in the United States. I think they use more Phillips screws in the United States. Wing nut. Okay, wing nut. This is just meant for securing things down by hand. Don't put your wrench on this thing. You'll rip the ears off of it. It's it's just meant for hand tight, because you don't need to have a tool around. But some guys go crazy and they wrench them down, and then it just makes it difficult for you later. What do they got here? Retaining ring. Okay. Yeah, all right. So they refer to them as circlips. Circlips are a type of retaining ring. So they'll be inner and outer, and for those you'll use the pliers for them. Snap ring, sometimes referred to them as snap rings. So you'll have inner snap ring pliers and outer snap ring pliers. And those are usually for, holding things from sliding too far on a shaft, holding bearings into housings. Anchor bolts. We could do a whole section on anchor bolts. There's so many different kinds, so many different ways to anchor things down to the ground. It's you don't just go sticking things into the ground. You gotta be careful and plan out, especially drilling in the concrete. You have to make sure that you're away from the edge, because I know fasteners and anchor bolts don't like going into the by the edge of a concrete slab, because it may cause cracking. No dowel pins? Would you classify dowel pin as a fastener, or is it more locating? Let's see here. It might have been under pins here. Pins are unthreaded mechanical fasteners usually inserted through preformed holes. The most common type of pins for industrial usage are, oh yeah, dowel pin. There you go. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, locating, but in the same vein, for sure. Flange nuts. These are handy. You know, they got the, it's like an integrated washer. So it's nice. You don't have to worry about dropping a washer or having to have one with you. It's built right in. Yeah, flat washers, flange bolts, T-nut. Some of these I have not seen. Square head bolts, as the name says, it's a bolt. It's got a square head on it. Staples. Yeah, I haven't dealt too much with staples, but putting stuff into more putting stuff into wood, I would think. Drywall screws. Yeah, the drywall screws. You just got to make sure you get the ones that you think are the best, and ones that are going to do the most holding for you. Too many times people put stuff into drywall and it just ends up pulling up because it's not strong enough or it doesn't distribute the weight good enough. So they have to try to make sure you pick them for that, because drywall is so finicky, and it just looks like hell if you get it if you don't do it just right. You know, you get holes there and cracks and just not good. A weld nut. What's a weld nut? It's a special type of nut specifically designed to be welded to another object. There are various types and different applications. Okay. Huh. I do not believe I've used those before. Hex lag screws. Hex lag screws. These are excellent. You definitely want it to secure something to a piece of wood. You use a lag screw. Different lengths, different sizes. I've used these quite a bit recently, just to secure things to pallets and such, and yeah, they do a good job. Weld nuts remind you of Nelson studs? Nelson studs? Is that a trade name, I wonder? Self-drilling screws. Also known as tech screws. These are handy. They've got like a pseudo drill point on them. So yeah, they help drill in there, make their own way in through the metal, and then will thread in. You don't want to keep putting them in and out, but you can just do single use, and that should be good. I've used a lot of these, especially stainless ones. Nelson studs are weld-on studs, good for belt guards and such, or other sheet metal where dimensions aren't precise. Ah, okay, I gotcha. Although, yeah, sheet metal where dimensions aren't precise. I mean, that's the one thing that bothers me about sheet metal stuff is it looks good until you touch it. And as soon as you touch it, open it, do whatever, take it apart, it doesn't go back together the same way again. You always have a hard time fighting with it, trying to get it back together. It just doesn't want to stay. Wedge anchor. Okay, yeah, just like the other anchors I'd mentioned before. Toggle bolt. Toggle bolt is also something you'd use as in drywall as well. And I think these provide a better grip, holding power and such than just your regular plastic anchor or metal anchor you'd put in a screw into the wall. This one goes right through and then opens up and really grabs onto the backside there. Roofing nails, drywall screw, a Parker screw. What the heck is a Parker screw? A self-tapping screw is a screw that can tap its own hole. Yes. Driven into material. More narrowly, self-tapping is used only to describe a specific type of thread cutting screw intended to produce a thread through soft material. Okay, well, a Parker screw is just a self-tapping screw then. A cotter. Cotter is a pin or a wedge passing through a hole to fix parts tightly together. But in the US, it means a split pin. Oh. Cotter pin? Okay. Because to me, cotter pins and split pins are different. Yeah, let's see if there's anything different here. There's the carriage bolt with the flat head. Eye bolt, self-tappers with the drill on the end. Wood screws, U-bolts, machine screws, socket screws. Shear nuts. Flat washers. They call it spring washer here, but that one would also be as what I refer to as a lock washer. Cup washer, square plate washers, repair washers. Tooth lock. Yeah, okay. So they call it tooth lock. I had also heard of these called shake-proof washers. Pop rivets, large flange pop rivets, solid head rivets, drive rivets. There's a little bit of a better picture of anchor bolts. Anchor bolt, that's drop-in style there. You hit it to the bottom of the hole you made that you drilled, and as soon as you start tightening the nut down, it'll start pulling back up, and the bottom will separate out and grab onto the sides of the hole. The carriage bolt again with the flat head. Eye bolt. This one obviously this one's not for lifting. This is just for hanging plants or something like that. I would never use that for lifting. Hex bolt, square head bolt, the U-bolt. And there's also studs, which is what you'll use when you're doing flanges together. So they don't have any head on them. They just have threads and then space and then more thread. So that's what you'll use when you're putting flanges together. It goes into a little bit in depth about them. Wood screws, self-tappers. Okay, they call these grub screws, but these are, to me, this is a set screw. And it says grub screws are a special type of screw which are found to have no head. These screws are used at places where there needs to be no movement or rotation between two parts. And the different kinds of nuts. Shear nuts. I don't think I've ever used a shear nut. Shear nuts have hexagonal gripping point which snaps off during the maximum torque, leaving just the nut, which is quite difficult to remove. Okay. I guess there are some instances you want that. The types of washers, rivets. No, that's it for that. So yes, that is. Let's see if they've got anything else I've missed here. No, nothing. Nothing. It's got to be better pictures. Oh, there is one thing. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these before. It's called a super bolt. Now this is quite something else. I mean, I think I've only been around like maybe one or two of these things in my career, and it's pretty crazy. Like the thing is, it's a giant nut with little bolts around it, the outside of it. So once you screw it down to where you need it, you tighten these ones down and it just clamps on. And I don't think it's coming off. Like, this is pretty amazing. See if we can't get a good picture of it. Super Bolt. No? You guys don't have any good shots? Oh. Oh, it's from Sao Paulo. So to take it, this is all in Portuguese. Huh. Okay, well, I'll try to find a different one. Yeah, so these things are quite the fastener. You want to fasten stuff down, you get this thing, because that's pretty good. Yeah, and I think it pushes down and stretches it so that it can't move around the thread on the inside. Oh, this explains how. Well, if it could be in English, it would be a little more helpful, but I think you get the idea. Should be able to show how it works. I would just like to know what machinery they're going to use that on. Looks like they want you to spray it down. Go in a clockwise motion all the way around. I wonder if they'd want you to do a bolt pattern and follow that through. But yes, that is a super bolt. Not something very common that you'll encounter, but definitely something that is out there. Okay, let's see what I got in the big book of mechanicking here. Okay. Well, there's a few things you have to learn about fasteners. Some that are not just used for clamping things together, but they can be used for transmitting power, such as on a lathe. There's a screw on a lathe, and it will, when you're using the automatic on the lathe to do your pass, the lathe will use that screw to push the carriage back and forth. And that uses, let's see, uses Acme, which is funny that you'd hear an Acme, but that's an Acme thread or a square thread, a buttress, and worm thread. Sometimes they'll be used to control movement, as in a jacking screw. So that'll be used for like locating motors and such when you're doing alignment. It'll be used to convey material, like as in a food grinder, spiral threads like that. And yeah, as we discussed, parts, it'll hold things together. Fasteners will also form a pressure-tight joint, as in a tapered pipe thread. And, believe it or not, can be used for measuring, as in a micrometer, because it has V-form threads. And so as long as you have a proper measurement from the thread, from the crest, from crest to crest, you can figure out what your movement will be by a turn of the drum of your micrometer. And then yeah, there's external threads, internal threads. You have to know your thread pitch. Whenever you're looking up fasteners and you want to know about them, or you want to order some, you're going to have to know what kind of pitch you want. And that's the distance from a point on a screw thread to a corresponding point on the next thread, measured parallel to the axis. So if your pitch in imperial, it will be your threads per inch. So how many threads per inch? And you'll always find that it's going to be either fine thread or coarse. So let's say half-inch thread, 13 threads per inch coarse, 20 threads per inch fine. So you always have to know what pitch you need. And your major and minor diameters, but that's not that critical. It's usually nominal for what you're doing. Yeah, you shouldn't need to know thread angle or anything like that. It won't be something that you encounter unless you're like building stuff from scratch, or if you're like in if you're a machine tool, building machine tools. The fit you'll want to do, because sometimes you want a little tighter fit, so things aren't as loose. Most of the time it'll be just a regular close fit. And don't forget, there's right-handed, which is the most common, but there's also left-handed threads. So if you find that something's not fitting, maybe double check, take a look. Make sure somebody hasn't used a left-handed where you're supposed to be right-handed. It's an easy mistake to make, that's for sure. Yeah. So yeah, there's thread series like American National Thread, Unified Screw Thread. So you'll see stuff. If you're ever drilling and tapping, you're gonna need a UNC or UNF or NC or NF. You'll see that right off the bat. Just make sure it matches up for what you're doing with the bolt and the nut. American National Thread has a 60-degree angle with flats on the crest and root. The Unified Thread has a 60-degree angle with a rounded root, rounded or flat crest. So they're not exactly the same, there's a slight difference. Oh yes, MPT. So that stands for, most people think it stands for National Pipe Thread. No. It stands for National Pipe Taper. Because the tapered, this is the neat thing that I've learned, and that's tapered threads seal the joint and prevent leakage, right? And standard pipe threads, the flanks come into contact first, which is the tops. Tops of the threads come into contact first. And there's spiral clearance around the threads. In the dry sealed pipe threads, the roots and crests engage first. So that's the sides of the thread. The side of the thread engages first. And that's where you get your sealing from. So that's why a lot of people are confused as to why their threads are leaking and such. It's because it's not because of the points or the tops of the threads. It's because it's on the sides. That's where it does all the sealing. And you have to be careful too, because a tapered thread, you can split it if you tighten it down too hard. So you always have to make sure there's a few, like maybe 2 to 3 threads showing as you're tightening things down. If you go too far, because it's tapered, it'll act just like a wedge, and it'll split whatever you're trying to put it into. There's also metrics. So metric, they do a little differently. They don't measure threads per inch. They go, they measure from top to top. So when you want to know what the pitch is for a metric, it's always going to be like 1 millimeter or 1.25 millimeters or 1.5 millimeters. It's pretty simple. It's like 1 millimeter between the tops of the threads. And there's going to be always different grades. So, you know, your grade 3, your grade 2, grade 3 is going to be your less tensile strength. And, you know, your grade 8s, your L9s, those are going to be your higher tensile strength, or which is tensile is the pulling force of the bolt. So yeah, we've gone through quite a few of the kinds already. Machine screws, tooth lock washers, spring lock pins. So you always got to make sure, so you have a fastener, maybe you want to tap a hole for it. So you got your taper tap, you've got your plug tap, and then you got your bottoming tap. So you'll have to use those for a blind hole, the bottoming ones. They can reach down further and thread more. Make sure you always drill the right size hole to put your tap into. I'm sure a lot of mistakes can be made. If you drill one that's not big enough, you're going to really give that tap a hard time, and you may end up even snapping it. But if you drill one too large, you won't get enough thread depth, and you won't have enough thread engagement, and the fastener could pull out So you don't want to do that either. Make sure there's lots of charts out there. You can always get something that will tell you the right tap drill size to use, and even if don't have the exact drill, you can always get one that's very close. I know some will be letter drills or number drills, but you can still always refer back to a fractional size drill to use to get the correct hole that you need. And just remember that when you're torquing them down, either do dry or with some lubrication. So when you lubricate something up, it's going to spin even more, and that could cause trouble too, because you will end up putting too much torque on it, and it might end up pulling the threads apart. So always remember, if you're going to do it dry, there's going to be a torque value for that. But if you're going to do it with lubrication, there's going to be a torque value for that. And it will always be less, because you don't want to end up wrecking what you've put so much hard work into. And yeah, as well with the fasteners, you're going to have to learn how to torque them down properly, because most of the times, majority of the times, you will need to torque them down to manufacturer specifications. Otherwise, they won't honor their warranty, or things won't work properly. So always make sure your torque wrench is been certified and it's been calibrated, because believe it or not, the torque wrenches need to be calibrated once a year. And you can have the different kinds. You can have the limiting one. You can have the one with the deflecting beam on them. You can even get the ones that are digital now, and they'll beep and vibrate when you get to the right torque. So they've come quite far in technology of torque wrenches. But if you ever have to remove a fastener that's broken, you're in for a hard time, that's for sure. It doesn't get easy. If you snap off a fastener, or even if you snap off a tap from a hole, you're in for a lot of work. You've just made yourself a lot more work to do. So, right off the bat, first thing I always do, hammer and chisel. I grab that. Maybe not even like just a chisel with a small point on it, and then seeing if you can at least move it. If it can move, then you're ahead of the game. If it doesn't, well, now you've got some work ahead of you. You either have to grind it flat and use a punch to mark a place for a drill to go. Then you got a drill. Then you have to get an easy out or a screw extractor, hammer it in, and try to turn it. What usually happens is you end up breaking the screw extractor because it's not strong enough. So, yeah, you got to keep working at it. There's other ways to go about it too. You can see if you can maybe get a weld a piece on there. Get a welder that knows what they're doing, and they can help you out. They can weld a piece on there, and hopefully it will be able to give you that assistance that you need to get it out. But most of the time it involves doing a lot of drilling, and then just hoping that you can free it up with a little bit of persuasion. But don't give up, because sometimes it's the only thing you can do. You can't always just throw things away and start again. Sometimes you have to stick with what you have and try to get it made. Try to get it made so you can get it all done. Anyway, that is all I got for you today on fasteners. There are a lot of them out there, and there are a lot of different ones, and I don't know if you'll ever see every single one of them out there, but they are necessary. They do so much for you. And with that, I would just like to thank everyone that showed up today. It was good seeing you all. Godzillionaire, it's a pleasure. On Saturday, I will be continuing on with Advance Wars for the Game Boy Advance. I'm getting through the tutorial right now. Just learning the ropes, how to do what I need to do to win. Get my strategies all lined up. On Sunday, it will be Sunday Anime Chat, and with that, I will be looking at the next sequel to New Dominion Tank Police. And that is called, I just have it here on my list here. It's called, I think it's Tank SWAT 01. Yes. Okay, yeah. Tank SWAT 01. And I will give you my rundown of that. That is going to be only one episode, so a nice quick watch and rundown for you. Also, after that, Trades Talk Tuesday again. And we'll see what we go from there. I'll pick something, a nice topic, a little more exciting than fasteners maybe. See if we can't get into that. Yeah, I should talk about some projects as well. There'll be some projects I could show you. And yeah, that'll be it. So, until next time, everyone, this is Pop Culture Mechanic, and I am signing off.